Hello everybody, welcome to another Simple Emotions podcast. Thank you for all of the support you showed on the previous few. Today we have a junior, Brooke Goodrich here, she's going to talk about her experiences in her modeling career, which is something that I could never imagine doing. It's really cool. And her experiences with her auditory processing disorder, which made her day-to-day life harder and her educational life harder as well. So Brooke, if you want to take it away with either or.
Okay, so I'll start with my hearing. Came first in my life. So I couldn't talk at all until I was 6 years old, which kind of seems normal, like you're growing up. And my parents always knew that I kind of had something wrong with me, and they did everything right. Brought me to doctors, hearing specialists and everything. And they were just like, oh, well, she's just growing up. And my parents like, no, something's definitely wrong. And I actually was delayed my kindergarten year and stayed for preschool another year just because I couldn't talk. And then my first day of kindergarten, when I tried again, I started talking, like, immaculate. Like, I don't even know what happened. And so growing up in speech therapy and just learning how to talk, which I just thought was normal, thought everyone had to go through that. And then when I was 11 years old, I was entering middle school, and they always do the hearing tests in schools. And I had just transitioned to a different school, and the school nurse was like, hey, like, something's really wrong here. And so fortunately, my mom worked at the school at the time, so she had a close relationship with the nurse. And they kind of talked about it and sent me back for auditory testing when I was 11. And that's when they kind of found everything out, and that my parents had been right all along. And I do have a serious issue with my hearing. And so it's not really a turn up the volume kind of situation. It's when people are, mumbling when they talk, not facing them. Everything just sounds backwards pretty much. And I especially can't hear when, like, if you were behind me right now, I probably would not be able to hear you or understand what you're saying. So when this happened, it was like a lot. Like, obviously, I'm a young kid. I'm changing schools. I'm finding this out about myself. So it was really like, it was an amazing moment in my life, honestly, because now I have my hearing aid and it helps, and I've kind of figured out what I need to do to help myself be like better hear and better understand my environment. So like, even right now, like, you're sitting on my good side, my good ear, so it is only one-sided hearing, but still affects me. And it can always get worse, so I could go completely deaf and stuff like that. So for now, we're good. But around the same time, my sister always done dance and pageants and modeling, and so when I was 11, I started competing in pageants, just kind of following behind her. And I didn't really know if I'd like it, and then I ended up falling in love with it after about like a year and a half, and started competing more seriously. And then about a year ago, I signed my first modeling contract full-time, which was super exciting. But it's also, modeling world has been great to me. I've had great experiences and met so many people I could have never imagined connecting with. But it's also kind of led me to struggling with myself and who I am. Obviously, it's very subjective. You're putting yourself out there for judgment, and really it's just people looking at a photo of you and they're like, oh, we like her, we don't like her. And so that's something I've definitely come to terms with. I think starting when I was younger kind of helped me get into that world. But sometimes it's like, oh, what didn't I do? Like, why am I not good enough for this? So I'll start with hearing in school, I guess. I was always super shy. I didn't have like a lot of confidence. And then when I learned what was kind of wrong with me, I guess, it really helped me grow who I am. And then even just being here, like, talking like this I could not do this. So that's crazy, just even to do that on a day-to-day basis. But in school, my teachers are great, everyone that I work with, especially with lecture classes, like projecting. I don't know if you've seen, it's like captions. Yeah, so it's like takes all the words and make captions on the board, so that's really helpful. And just learning what works for me and what doesn't. Like, obviously we go to prep school and take hard classes, stuff like that. Like, I take my language as Mandarin, which is one of the hardest languages to learn. And so just really knowing what I struggle with, and then probably sometimes have to put in more time after school than some students, but just making sure I have everything clearly is what is most beneficial. And then once that's done, I'm usually pretty set, but I do have a 504 plan for all of that. But it's just learning who you are and being okay with that. Like, it's nothing I ever did. Like, when I was like, oh, like, I'm a grandma, like, I can't hear. Like, that was a very real thing. And so coming to terms with, like, I can't fix this. Like, this is something I was born with. It's okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make me any different. It's just who I am and part of my story. So bringing that back to modeling, it's one of the things that actually sets me apart. So it's beneficial because people are like, oh, she can talk in front of all of us and be totally okay and not have a confidence issue when she's struggling with even processing what we're saying. And honestly, like, over the years, I've definitely learned how to process faster, but my brain's always working overtime. Like, I'm always tired.
Yeah.
I'm always kind of down. Like, sometimes I just need complete silence. And it's not because I'm antisocial. It's just I need, like, my brain gets so tired compared to the average person. So that's actually something that's benefited me in the modeling world. But like I said earlier, putting yourself out there, it can be hard to just not listen to the hate. Someone said something to me once that really stuck with me, and it was my pageant coach, and she said, someone may not like you because you have the same hair color as a villain in the movie they watched the day before. And it brought me to this realization that I can be my best self and people could not like that performance of me or that side of me. And so I know we talked about before we started recording how modeling and like body dysmorphia. So a lot of people think that, oh, like, if you're bigger, like, it's not okay, like, you need to be skinnier. But it's also on the same side. Like, I'm a very tiny person and I've just always grown up that way. And most of the time people are like, oh, she's too tiny, like, she's too skinny, like, something must be wrong with her. And there's nothing wrong with me. It's just who I am. And so over, I'd say, the past 8 months, I've really been trying to work on that and just become stronger to look more defined. But it, like, has not been helping. Like, it helps to an extent, but there's only so much you can do. Like, personally, I can't eat 3,000 calories a day. And so working with that, and more recently we've just come to terms with, like, that's who I am. Like, there's nothing we can do to change that. Even, like, working out more or eating more, it just that's just my stature. And so it's definitely been something to overcome, because it is hard when people are like, oh, like, you're too skinny, or like just really cracking down on what you look like. And there's definitely times where, like, right now I'm preparing for a big competition and I have one. It's like about a month. It's the first day. And I know, like, from now till then, I'm going to be, like, a horrible person to be around. Like, not even, like, I don't even say that to be, like, oh, like, she's a bitch.
You're stressed.
Yeah, exactly. I know I'm going to be a horrible person. I'm going to be, like, just in a bad mood all the time. But then once it's over, I'll be like, oh, okay, perfect, like, myself again. I got a whole nother year. Like, competitions are usually, like, every 6 months, so you have time to prepare. But, like, I just, like, work all the time for it.
Yeah.
And so really, and, like, mental health obviously affects, like, you have so much stress on you to go out and perform. And especially with my upcoming pageant, it's like, I was first runner-up last year, which is second place. And so people are, like, counting on me to go in and do well. And not, like, my family. My family's super supportive. They're great. They'll be happy no matter what. But more of, like, my coaches, the people who've been watching.
Yeah, your expectations are higher now.
Exactly. Everyone's like, oh, like, she should win this year. And it's like, you don't know, because people are just judging you based off how you look, how you talk, or plainly, like, if they like you or not. So it can be super stressful. I know, like, last year before the pageant, I had to distance myself from a lot of people just because I couldn't have extra negative energy in my life. Yeah. And so I was going through a bit of a breakup, a rough patch. And I couldn't surround myself with that person. I was like, I had to cut them off for, like, 2 weeks because it is so hard. I'm so hard on myself already during that time to have extra negativity surrounding me. But
that's a really good, like, and mature decision that you made, because you can't, especially in a relationship, like, even detached from like a modeling or a sport, or I apologize if I offended anyone that thinks modeling is a sport. I don't know how to classify it. Is it a sport?
It depends.
Okay, that's a good answer. It's like dance.
Yeah.
But you can't help someone else or succeed in something else before you succeed with internally and focus on yourself. So that's a really mature mindset to have, and I'm happy that you took those steps, even though it's really hard and people may not see why you did it.
Yeah, exactly. So Usually, like, the week of the pageant, I just, like, turn my phone off when I don't need it or, like, my social media, at least, because the people I need to be in communication with, my family and myself. I don't need to be writing coaches back right away, makeup artists, like, everything like that. And that's also been another side to, like, pageants and modeling that's super stressful is, you know, we have phones, and they're great way to connect, but people feel like they always have access to me.
Yeah.
So, literally within the past 2 days, my makeup artist has texted me probably like 10 times about one subject, and I just haven't been answering because I've been like too stressed out to focus on that one thing specifically, and then I feel bad for not getting back to her, and it's like kind of leaves me with like guilt, I feel like, and I feel like that's with anything, coaches, teammates, whatever your situation is. I'm sure like brand deals, stuff like that. You probably get annoyed when people don't answer too, but that's something else that definitely stresses me out around, honestly, just like all the time, having everyone have access to me. But
yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing. I mean, it's crazy how much you've already gone through and how mature your mindset is at being 16.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I feel like I was even early on my mental development, and I was 17. I was older than that. Well, I'm going to ask you a few questions. We'll start with your hearing. In the classroom, you obviously talked about how it's a lot harder for you to learn and how to process. First, this is going to be like triple barrel question. Okay. So it's going to be heavy. Did it affect your grades at all? And if it did, how did you manage to like mentally understand that that's okay because you have a disability? And then the other side of it, if it didn't affect your grades, how did you kind of be able to focus even extra when you're already like so locked in to get those good grades?
Yeah, so we really noticed this my sophomore year, which was last year. Like growing up, I'd always been a very good student, always like cared about school, and I still do, but sophomore year is when things really started to like take a toll on me, like having AP classes, honors classes, and that's when we started to dive deeper into my hearing, because I went to a really small middle school as private, and there were like 20 kids in my grade, 6 teachers, like it wasn't anything crazy. So switching to Worcester Academy in general was a big change. Freshman year you're not really taking the APs, honors that you would a sophomore, junior, senior year. So my freshman year passed with flying colors, and then sophomore year was really a shift. Like I knew Worcester Academy was going to be harder, but I was like, I did this my freshman year, I should be able to be fine my 3 remaining years. And so when sophomore year came, I was like, okay, like this is hard. Like this is not normal. Like why do I not have all A's? Something that I just always had growing up.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate to have a good education, and I guess my parents always instilled in me like good education, like be smart, get good grades. I feel like most parents do. And so when we shifted my sophomore year, my parents, they were still supportive, but they didn't really understand it at first. They're like, what's going on? Like, you're just not passing in assignments, like not studying. And so I definitely had to put in more effort. My sophomore year wasn't great, and then junior year, just learning how to, like different study tactics, everything like that. Teachers have been super great this year with helping me learn in the ways that I need to learn, because everyone learns differently.
Yeah.
I just use that word a lot, but sometimes it's easier for me to just read by myself than listen to someone read.
Yeah.
So I know like in AP Lang right now, sometimes we'll read like a chapter or 2 ahead. So if we're reading it in class, I know what I'm reading.
Yeah.
And I don't really have to worry about listening to people, especially kids reading. It can be a struggle. No hate, but it can be tough. So yeah, definitely working with like, okay, like I'm trying my best and putting my best foot forward. Doing everything I can, and then if you know you're doing that, there's nothing else you can do.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people take for granted that don't have a disability, because like I think it's hard naturally, just and I'm fortunate enough where I don't have a learning disability, and I think I've even fell in this hole before, is unless it's like a stereotypical disability like autism or Down syndrome, people don't understand why it's so hard, because no one talks about it as much. And it's hard to talk about all of them because there's so many, and there's something different in every person. But like, if and then I feel like there's also the appearance side. Like, you look like a normal person. You're obviously a model. So people wouldn't assume that you have some kind of disability. And it's really impressive how well you've been able to kind of like adapt and adjust with that disability to succeed. Because high school is no joke and it's hard anyways. And having an extra thing to make it even harder, I just couldn't even imagine. And shifting back to the modeling, I remember, like Brooke said, we discussed a little bit before we started recording about body dysmorphia and modeling. And I originally thought that she was going to talk about the type of body dysmorphia where you look in the mirror and you think that you're bigger than you are, which is a real issue. But I was surprised when she told me, and you just shared, that it's the opposite. It's I'm too skinny. The first question I'm going to have, and this is kind of a chunky one.
Okay.
So if you don't feel comfortable answering it, that's okay. But when you first started experiencing that and thinking that you were too skinny, being told you were too skinny, did you ever think that that type of body dysmorphia wasn't real? Because it's not this stereotypical kind?
Yeah, so I think last year, obviously, like I said, being first runner-up, it's a big deal. I don't think people, like, sometimes they're like, oh, like, okay. But when you're competing against that many people, it is a big deal. And you kind of fall on, you've been preparing for this for, like, a year. And you kind of fall into, like, a little bit of a depression. Like, you don't really want to be around people. Like, you need time away from that world. And then, so, getting my feedback from, like, what the judges were saying, I was like, that's the one thing that, like, honestly, that was my only feedback. I didn't get, like, oh, she messed up when she was talking, or I didn't like this point, leave it out in an interview, or her stage presence wasn't as energetic as I'd like to see. Like, that was the only remark that they had. And I was like, okay, so I did everything else well.
Except something you can't really control.
I can't control. And I'm not, like, a naturally super tall person. Like, I'm a decent height, but I'm not your 5'10", 6-foot girl, and a lot of the people I compete against are. And so even there's a picture of the top 5, and literally it's like a straight line, and then there's me, and then it goes back up again. And so I know the people I compete against, like, obviously they're taller, they have a little bit bigger frame, and so again, I'm like, that's the one thing that's setting me out, and it's negative, and I can't even change it. So that's when I kind of started caring a lot more about fitness and, like, what I'm eating and when I'm working out and what I'm doing to try to gain weight, I guess, muscle weight, and just make my appearance look a little bit bigger than I am. And when I started out, I was like I said, I was like, there's, like, no, how am I gonna fix this? Like, I can't fix this. And no one really ever talks about it. And then, honestly, the more I started telling people about it, they're like, oh yeah, like, I've heard this about people who dance in pageants, and they're like, it is a real thing, and it goes both ways, and to be sensitive to both sides, because I feel like people might be like, look at me and be like, oh, she's so skinny, she must have something wrong with her, but there's nothing I can do about it. And so being sensitive, like, to people, like, and just honestly, like, not judging them in that way for things that you don't know what's going on, or things that there's, like, a rule. If you can't change it within 10 seconds, don't tell someone about it. And I feel like that's very real in everything, and just keeping that, keep reminding yourself of that. So I wouldn't go and tell someone, like, oh, your feet are too small. Like that is just, like, something I wouldn't say. You don't say that to someone. So kind of the same idea there.
Yeah. I mean, I think modeling is just so interesting on the way you compete and the way you win, and that would piss me off if someone's like, yeah, you would have won if you changed something you couldn't control.
Exactly.
So I think it's really impressive how you're able to understand that, and that would beat me up, because I beat myself up about stuff I can control in the gym. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
But that'll segue into my next question. Only being 16 years old and being able to speak so confidently about how you process things mentally while having a processing disorder, ironically, how do you think you were able to get to that point? And if you remember, because sometimes it just happens, what time in your life did it kind of just shift?
Yeah, so honestly, when I had found out about my hearing is the same time I started competing in pageants, and just got my hearing and everything, and really learned what was going on with me. And that as a whole really was just a confidence boost. Like, I never used to go to birthday parties growing up, never had birthday parties. And it wasn't like, I'm a very social person. Like, I think, I can talk a lot. And so just having, like, I would just not hang out with kids from my school. Like, I was a young kid, like, I should be doing this. And I always wanted to stay at home with, like, my mom, my dad, my sister. And then suddenly I started wanting to, like, talk to people more, and not necessarily talk about myself, but, like, talk about, literally anything. Start going out more and hang out with more people and having birthday parties, everything like that. And so, honestly, I think pageantry has been something very positive in my life, because they kind of force you to talk. Talk to judges, talk to your competitors and everything like that. And now I could easily, like, get up in front of the whole school, and something I never even dreamed about as a kid or thought about. And so really just changing, like, having timed interviews with judges and trying to get all this information out is something that's really helped me, because now I feel like I can talk to anyone about anything. And it's kind of funny because that's something my mom is known for, so I feel like we kind of share that, and I just had to come to terms with it and realize that I could do it, and it wasn't so scary to talk to strangers or people I didn't know well. But yeah, it's been a transition for sure.
Yeah, and it's really hard to step out of your comfort zone, which is exactly what you did. But sometimes, most of the time, when you step out of that comfort zone, it kind of just keeps on snowballing.
Exactly.
It's like what I've done with this. Like, I normally, when I was younger, I used to hate my voice and hate listening to myself. Like, it wasn't like absurd insecurity where, like, oh, I don't want to talk to people because I think I sound weird. But, like, if you were to show me a recording of me talking, I'd be like, don't show me that. But now I do these things, and I have to watch these things again. I even play them when I need to get watch time. But I think it's really impressive how well you were able to get out of that comfort zone. And that just proves that once you get out of your comfort zone, it really just keeps on going from there. That's not to say it's easy, because you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to go outside today and step out of my comfort zone. But
yeah, you really have to push yourself, but I'd say 9 times out of 10 it's for the better.
It'll be okay. As we wrap up here, are there any last remarks you want to say about yourself or mental health in general?
I think we covered a lot.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on here today. It was a lot of fun. I hope you guys got a little bit out of Brooke's story and her journey of everything she's gone through and how she's been able to turn that into a positive, and just yet again proves that anyone, no matter what you're going through, there is a good on the other side of the tunnel, and that it is possible to be successful in whatever you want to do, no matter what you go through. And I say this after every video, and I'm sorry that it's cringy and cliche, but if you really did enjoy listening to me and Brooke talk today, click the red subscribe button so they pop up on your feed. And if you really, really liked it, click the post notifications button so you can get notified when I have great guests on here, just like Brooke. Well, I appreciate you guys watching all the way through. If you made it here, thank you so much, and have a good day.